Philadelphia News, team of my heart.
Is the Sixers' resting plan putting the season at risk? With the NBA's investigation underway, missing key games has raised concerns. Will this strategy keep the team playoff ready or cost them in the long run? Stay up to date with all the latest Sixers news. Subscribe and
So, the league's eyes are on Philly again, and you're probably asking yourself, why? It's all because of the NBA's player participation policy, and now there's a full-blown investigation underway. You feel that sting, don't you? The uncertainty, the frustration of not knowing how this could impact the Sixers season? That's the pain. The league wants to know if the team is holding back its star from nationally televised games without a legitimate injury. You know what that could mean: fines, penalties, and even more noise around a franchise that's already got its plate full. Before the Sixers faced off against the Bucks, Nick Nurse addressed the situation, sort of. You could hear it in his tone. This wasn't something he was prepared for. "I don't have any thoughts on it," he said. You know Nurse, he's always focused on the task at hand, on the game, on the team in front of him. But now, the team's actions are under a microscope. And you can't help but wonder what kind of pressure this investigation adds to a season that already feels like it's walking a tightrope. The thing is, the team's plan isn't new. They've been upfront about managing their key players' health this season. It's no secret, and you've seen it yourself, training camp came and went without a full scrimmage from the franchise cornerstone. 6 preseason games passed, and not once did you see that dominant presence on the court. It's all part of the bigger picture, a strategy to keep him fresh and ready for when it matters most, the playoffs. But you also know this brings a whole different set of challenges. When you don't get that game-time rhythm, that chemistry with the squad, it starts to feel like you're working uphill. And that's the problem, isn't it? Finding that balance between keeping your star healthy and building the kind of team chemistry that's going to take you deep into the postseason. So, while you're hearing Nurse talk about continuity and working through the absences, it's clear, this team has to figure out how to win, with or without its full roster. It's early in the season, but you feel it already. There's no room for error. The pressure's on, and now you've got the league watching closely, as if the Sixers didn't have enough to deal with. This isn't just about fines. This is about focus. About a season that could be derailed before it even gets going. The NBA's rules are simple: star players need to suit up for games that are nationally televised, unless there's a valid reason. But the Sixers are saying there's nothing physically wrong. It's a resting plan. A necessary precaution. So, how does the league decide what's valid? You start thinking, does this kind of strategy really work? Will keeping someone sidelined during the regular season pay off in the long run, or will it just disrupt the chemistry that this team desperately needs? It's tough to find answers right now, and that's what makes this moment so unsettling. You're waiting for the league to make its call, and at the same time, you're waiting for the Sixers to show that they can find their rhythm without their biggest star on the floor. There's no easy way through this, no clear solution. But you know one thing, this team has to come together fast. Because in the NBA, momentum is everything, and you can't afford to lose it before you even have it. For Nick Nurse, this season is all about adaptation. You've heard him say it before: players come in and out, injuries happen, and you have to adjust. But you also know that Nurse isn't a coach who just rolls with the punches. He wants control. He wants to dictate how the game plays out, and that's hard to do when your lineup is constantly changing. Yet, this is the hand he's been dealt. And you're left wondering how long this strategy will hold up. Now, you've got to watch closely, because the investigation isn't the only thing hanging over the Sixers. It's just one piece of a larger puzzle, a puzzle that feels more complicated every day. What happens next could set the tone for the rest of the season. And as a fan, you're hoping the Sixers come out of this with more than just fines to worry about. It's about how they respond, how they regroup, and how they get back to the business of winning basketball games. You're here for the Sixers news, and there's a lot more to come. Now, as you keep an eye on this team, there's one thing that stands out: this resting plan is going to test everything. You can feel it, right? You're watching the team go out there without its key piece, and it changes the whole dynamic. The offense looks different. The flow isn't quite the same. You know how important it is to build that rhythm early in the season, and without that anchor on the floor, it's like you're waiting for something to click. But can it? That's the question, isn't it? You're left wondering how long this can go on before it starts to hurt. Nick Nurse, as always, keeps things calm. He talks about adapting, staying ready, and getting through the tough stretches. But you can't help but feel like this isn't just about missing a couple of games. It's bigger than that. This team has aspirations, you know that. They've got their eyes on the deep end of the season, and you've been through it enough times to understand that every little thing matters. The chemistry, the timing, the ability to execute at the highest level, it all starts right now. Missing time, even this early, starts to add up. And then there's the pressure. The league is watching, the fans are watching, and you're watching. It's almost as if every game without their centerpiece on the floor becomes a test for the rest of the team. Who's going to step up? Who's going to take the reins and make sure this team doesn't fall behind? You see glimpses of it, Maxey, Oubre Jr., maybe even a few surprise performances. But you know that's not enough. It's temporary. It's all holding the line until the big man comes back, and you're just waiting for that moment when the real season begins. But until then, every game feels like it has something at stake. It's not just about wins and losses on the stat sheet, it's about maintaining momentum. You know how quickly things can change in the NBA. One bad stretch, and suddenly, you're playing catch-up the rest of the way. And this Sixers team can't afford that. They've got to stay in the mix, keep their heads above water while they figure out how to get everyone on the floor. It's a balancing act, and it's hard not to feel like they're on the edge already. Nick Nurse knows this, of course. He's been around long enough to understand how to navigate these moments. But you're watching closely, and you know it's not just about strategy. It's about mindset. How does this team handle the pressure? How do they stay focused when the plan is to play without their leader for stretches? You can't help but think back to last season, when injuries derailed everything. It's tough not to see the parallels, and you're wondering, can they survive another season of uncertainty like that? But this time feels different. There's a plan. You know that much. The Sixers are being cautious, and that's understandable. But caution comes with a cost. You know it's not just about staying healthy, it's about staying sharp. And when you're sitting out, you're not building that sharpness, that instinct that comes from being in the game, in the moment. So, you're left wondering, how long can they afford to sit back and wait? You're already thinking about the future, the big games that are coming up, the matchups that are going to define this season. And you're asking yourself, can this team come together in time? Because every game without their full roster feels like time slipping away. And in the NBA, time is everything. You've seen teams get hot at the right time and ride that momentum all the way to the top. But you've also seen teams lose their way early and never quite find it again. And that's where the uncertainty comes in. You want to believe that this plan will work. You want to trust that the team knows what it's doing. But you've been here before, and you know how quickly things can change. One day, it's all going according to plan, and the next, you're scrambling to make up for lost time. So, you keep watching, keep waiting, and hope that when the time comes, this team will be ready. Because the truth is, the Sixers are built for more than just the regular season. You know that. This is about making a run, about being there when it counts the most. But you can't shake the feeling that they're walking a fine line. And with the league keeping a close eye on how this all plays out, it only adds to the pressure. So, what do you think? Have you already guessed which player we're talking about? You've seen the signs, the cautious resting plan, the focus on long-term health, the league watching closely. It's all pointing to one thing, isn't it? But here's the question that's really been on your mind, is this strategy worth it? Can the Sixers really manage without their most dominant force on the floor for stretches of the season? You know it's a gamble, and you've been around long enough to know that these gambles don't always pay off. Every time you watch a game without him, you feel it, don't you? That missing presence. The team looks different, the energy is different, and you can't help but wonder, how much longer can they keep going like this? You want to believe that this is all part of the bigger plan. That this rest, this carefully calculated absence, is setting things up for something special later in the season. But you can't shake the feeling that every missed game puts more pressure on the rest of the squad. And the NBA doesn't wait for anyone. And then there's the league's investigation. You've seen teams get caught in situations like this before, and it rarely ends well. The fines, the scrutiny, the distractions, it all adds up. The last thing this team needs is more pressure from the outside. But here we are, with the league breathing down their necks, questioning whether they're playing by the rules. It's a situation that could spiral quickly if the Sixers aren't careful. You feel that, right? The tension is there, and the stakes are high. But despite all of this, you keep coming back to one thing: this team's potential. You know they're built for something more. The pieces are in place. The coaching staff, the roster, the mentality, it's all there. But potential means nothing without execution. And that's where things get tricky. Can the Sixers execute when they're not at full strength? Can they find that chemistry, that rhythm, while managing a player's health so carefully? It's the challenge that defines this season. So, let's ask the real question: do you think this resting plan will work? Do you believe this is the right approach for a team that has championship aspirations? Because that's what this is all about, right? You're not here for just another regular season. You're here for something bigger. And that's what the Sixers are aiming for too. But with the league watching, the investigation looming, and every game feeling like a test, it's hard to see how this plays out. You've been through enough seasons to know that sometimes, everything goes according to plan. And sometimes, things fall apart fast. Now, here's the moment you've been waiting for. Of course, I'm talking about Joel Embiid. You knew that though, didn't you? The reigning MVP, the heart and soul of this team. The one player who changes everything when he's on the floor. But also the player whose health has always been a concern. And that's why this resting plan is so critical. The Sixers need him at his best when the games matter most. You've seen it: when Embiid is on, the Sixers are nearly unstoppable. But you also know that without him, things get shaky. So, this plan isn't just about rest, it's about survival. It's about making sure Embiid is ready to lead this team when it counts. You know the weight of the decision, the risk the Sixers are taking. But you also know that Embiid's health is the key to everything. So, while you might be frustrated with the missed games now, you understand the bigger picture. This is about the long haul. It's about keeping Embiid healthy for the playoffs, where championships are won and legacies are built. And as much as you want to see him on the floor every night, you also want him at his best when the stakes are highest. So, what do you think? Are you on board with the Sixers' plan for Embiid? Do you believe this strategy will get them to where they need to be, or are you worried that missing games now will cost them later? There's a lot to consider, and as a fan, you're right in the middle of it. But one thing's for sure, you're not missing a second of this Sixers news, and you know there's always more coming. That's why you've got to stay locked in. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you don't miss any updates. With everything happening around the Sixers, from the league investigation to Embiid's health, you're going to want to be the first to know how it all plays out.